also scientist, and rather pretty.
Morning, everyone. Okay, so should we get started here? We're going to try something a little bit different this morning. I'm going to start off with the share, and then we'll get into the verse. So my share will be based on the theme, which is don't tell me what you believe, show me how you behave. And I thought I'd start off this morning with a personal story that happened a couple weeks ago. My husband and I we have these like beautiful boxes, plant boxes, like right outside of our house. And I love them. I love putting flowers in them every year, and they just like bring me so much happiness. Well, one of the boxes like kind of broke a little bit, and you can still put plants in it, but it's like hit or miss whether or not the plants will actually stay and grow because it's kind of decrepit. So I asked him this year, I'm like, can you fix that box? So he's like, yeah, I can fix a box. I'm like, okay, great. So we go out to plant and to fix, and he's trying to fix the box, and I'm planting in the other planters. And he's like running. I see him like run away from the box. I'm like, what's going on? Is everything okay with the box? He's like, there's like bees. There's like a big bumblebee nest like right under the box, and they're like all coming out. I'm like, being the bulldog that I am, I'm like, just fix it anyway. Just get in there, fix the box. Don't worry about the bees. He's like, I really don't know. So he's working on this for like 20 minutes, running away, running back. I'm like, can we just like do something about the bees? Like, I don't know. Like, is there some kind of spray we can get? Or like, I really want this box, and I don't want these bees to inhibit me from being able to plant my plants. And he's like, Rachel, I think we don't want to kill the bees because the bees are so good and this is their home. I'm like, well, can we move their home? Well, this is their home. This is where they want to be. I'm like, goodness gracious, this is going to look ridiculous. I can't put plants in this box because these bees own it. It's like, I think you might just have to let go of this box this year. I'm like, no way am I letting go of this box. So I get all my plants. I run over to the bees. I'm like, you know what, bees, you scoot over. I'm going to put my plants in here anyway. So I plant my plants, and I'm like, I was actually just watering them yesterday, and all the bees came out as I'm watering them, and then I'm doing what my husband's doing. Anyway, moral of the story is like, I was ready to kill the bees, I'll be honest with you, because I wanted this box so well. I felt like I owned this box. This was my box. And my husband reminded me, like, this is their home. This is we can't just get rid of these bees. This is their home. And you know, my husband's not a practicing devotee. He's a devotee at heart, but he practices Catholicism, so he's not on the Bhakti path. And I sometimes when devotees ask me like, oh, so you met your husband before you were practicing? And I was like, nope, I met my husband when I was a devotee. Because what was important to me at that time was, and still is more than anything, is the essence of these teachings, and not so much, you know, dressing up in the beautiful outfits that we dress up in, or, you know, carrying a japa bag everywhere, or whatever our practices are. It's not so much that. To me, it was like I saw his heart when I met him, and that's what mattered a lot to me. And there's this verse, to me, it's kind of like, it's one of like our golden, what do they call that? The golden rule. I think of it as like kind of the golden rule in Bhakti, if it's not Vedasar, Chaitanya Sharan Prabhu can correct me later, but it's it reads, one should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. And I remember when I met my husband, I thought, this man imbibes all of those things. And I struggle with them. And I'm meditating a couple hours a day, and he just like naturally imbibes them. So that was my experience with that. Now, I will say, fast forward into marriage a few years, and you notice no one's perfect, and you know, we're not practicing the path of perfection here. We're practicing the path of transformation. So now it's like the best you could do is show up and be honest with yourself about the things that your shortcomings, and be honest with your partner about your shortcomings, and work together to try to grow and transform together, recognizing that, you know, no one's perfect. But just to share a little bit of this theme I really liked, because it's such a high value of mine. And that's my take on the theme. Now, if we want to get into the verse, and Chaitanya Charan Prabhu and Vedasara Prabhu can give us the synopsis on the take from the Bhagavad Gita, that would be wonderful.
You would like this prayer of invocation? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is a verse from the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse number 15. Yasman nodvijate loko, lokan nodvijate chaya, harsha marsha bhayodvegair, muktoya sachame priya. Translation. You're on mute, so you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Veda. He by whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Radha Devi, for sharing that experience. It's very apt for what you're saying over here. And so if we talk about this verse, if we consider that there is see, I'm here, somebody else is here. Now, above us, there is the divinity, the all-pervading divinity that is above. So often people think of spirituality as the way they relate with the divine. This is what they think of as spirituality. And it is definitely. So this involves some spiritual practices, like you mentioned. It could be chanting mantra, it could be prayers, it could be certain practices. All those are there. And that is what is primarily considered as spirituality. And that is, but in this particular section, what the Gita is telling us is our spirituality is seen by how we relate with others also. So the test of our spirituality is also seen in our relationship. So in general, the nature of life is that we somehow or the other, sometimes intentionally, many times unintentionally, we disturb others. So we disturb others, and then we are disturbed by others. So the test of our spirituality, one test of our spirituality, our devotion, is that this we can minimize. Now, we cannot avoid disturbances to some extent, because disturbances are just natural to life. So we could say one way is that this life is like ups and downs. They're there. So now those ups and downs, one of the characteristics of a steady person, the Bhagavad Gita says, a spiritual person is that the outer ups and downs, the effect of them internally is much lesser. So there'll be some effect, but much lesser. So now this same principle we can apply to our relationship. That if say somebody else, so this is the other person, now they act in disturbing ways, but so their actions are disturbing actions are there. But even though the disturbing actions are there, we stay calm. So we are not disturbed by those actions. And we're not disturbed because we have inner spiritual strength to tolerate their actions, to moderate our responses. And then conversely, suppose, now we can just change this image slightly. Suppose we are internally disturbed. So this is our internal. But even when we are internally disturbed, when we act our external, because of our spirituality, we are able to relatively stay calm. And thus, when our actions reach the other person is not disturbed by our action. So both, we are not disturbed by others, and then we don't disturb others. So this is the overall meaning of this verse in a pictorially depicted way. Any comments?
Yes, sir, Prabhu.
I think this is a very a verse that's very personal to me, because I see disturbances as something that is primarily felt in the mind. And so all these emotions of disturbances from, say, others or my own mind or nature, all this is felt in my mind. So whenever those disturbances come, I realize I have to distance myself from the mind. When I'm able to distance myself from the mind, then it enables me not to be disturbed by the disturbances that are provided to me by different external forces. So the thing that works for me always is to realize that I'm not the mind whenever there's any disturbances. Where is this sensation being felt in my life? When I'm disturbed, do I feel it in the gut? Do I feel it on my back? Do I feel it on my shoulders? So this disturbance is, I'm able to pinpoint it. It's primarily focused on the mind. So I realize that it has its own way of coping and dealing with it, but it has nothing directly to do with me. So I separate myself from the mind. And then I always keep in mind, the more I'm centered in my heart, and which means going deeper into myself, then it's easier for me to not be affected by this. I don't remember where I read this or who I have heard it from, but in the ocean, there's a lot of waves. And these waves are continuous. It's just part of life. Disturbances are just what it is. It's not something that you can just, erase all disturbances in your life. It's just, if we have a material body, if we exist in this world, we are going to be disturbed, just like the waves in the ocean. But then there's these fishes that actually are on the bottom of the ocean, where they're not having to deal with the waves on the top of the ocean. So I look at life as a journey where the more we are able to go deeper into ourselves, then we are not subjected to these major waves that come and try to throw us off. So this is what I was thinking whenever I think of this verse. And that is, of course, being in the heart is realizing that there is that space of divinity that is situated very close to you within the heart. So this is what I find personally, this verse, very applicable to me.
I love that you went there, Vedasara Prabhu, about the connection with the separation between the body and the mind. Yesterday, I was talking to a family member who recently was through some health issues and as a result got on a steroid. And I've kind of been talking to her throughout this journey for her. And I talked to her a couple days ago and I could tell she was just very full of anxiety. And I talked to her then yesterday and I said, how are you doing today? And I could tell she felt she was lighter and her voice was better. And she's like, oh, you know, I feel so much better. I talked to my doctor yesterday and my doctor said, I told her that I was having so much anxiety and I'm not used to having so much anxiety. And my doctor said that the steroid was causing me all the anxiety. And it just made me feel so much better. It's almost like, and that's not really the point, but the point is that the distance that the doctor created between her mind, like the doctor told her the anxiety is not you. The anxiety is this steroid, which in spiritual life, we go higher than that. You know, we're not the body, the mind, regardless of what external influence it's coming from. It's not us. But just the fact that she had been told that it wasn't her relieved her anxiety. And it's almost like we have to have that realization to be able to even deal with it, or we're so like tied to it, like attached to it as ours, and then we're just trying to defend it or say that it's not there, or we're so like caught in our ego that we can't even zoom out enough to get like a bird's eye perspective because we're just too in it. So I just thought it was really interesting that just her doctor telling her that it wasn't her relieved her like immediately.
Very nice. I think Chaitanya Charan, were
Yeah.
you
So beautiful. Now, we talked this point of distancing ourselves from our mind and how it is a vital principle of spirituality. In this particular section, this distancing from our mind. During the pandemic, we had physical distancing. But now we also need mental distancing, whether there's pandemic or not. This can be done by two ways. One is by introspection. So what we're talking about, just we get the insight, we remember the insight, and that distances us from our mind. But there is another way, and that is the focus of this verse, that is devotion. We could say, now sometimes devotion is thought of simply as emotion. Oh, that means that when I'm hearing some spiritual music, some music about the divine, then I feel very good. I go in a place which is associated with divine, sacred place, I feel good. So devotion is associated with emotion. However, devotion is also dedication. In one sense, emotion is, you could say, outside in. Emotion is what we feel. But dedication is inside out. It is what we do. And when there is a sense of devotion in the form of dedication, the dedication manifests, we could say, as purposefulness. So that when there is a higher purpose in our interactions with others, then that also helps us decrease this disturbance. So when I'm interacting with others, if we are largely in the material conception of life, then the primary thought is, when I see someone, what comes in my mind is, what can this person do for me? What can I get from this person? This person is wealthy, maybe we'll go for a party together, and this person will take the bill. This person good looking, maybe I can get some physical pleasure. So what can this person do for me? If this person is famous, then I can get a selfie with them, and I can also get some likes on my social media. This is the material conception. And when we have this conception that what can this person do for me? If that person does not do that thing for us, then immediately the idea is that, okay, why should I care for this person? What is the value of being with this person? And then naturally, if that person does something which is different from our expectation, then we get disturbed. But the spiritual conception is, when we are interacting with others, it's the attitude of service. It is, what can I do for this person? So this person is also a part of the divine. And as an expression of my love for the divine, I want to serve the divine, and I want to serve everyone relationship with the divine. So when we are looking at the other person, if we are thinking, what can I do for this person? Then if that person is disturbed, I try to calm them down. I may also be disturbed, but as a service, I'll try to restrain my disturbance, and I'll try to help that person decrease the disturbance. So this, the way devotion affects us is not so much, introspection is important, no doubt. But there's another way is through having that devotional purposefulness, a service attitude. So my problems might be there, but I would like to be of help with this person's problems. Like a doctor may have some personal problems in their family, but a doctor is treating a seriously sick patient. Then the doctor's focus is on, okay, how can I treat this person? And their own problems go back into the background. Of course, sometimes the doctors may be disturbed and the doctors may snap at patients. Doctors may do, that's a different thing. But if a dedicated doctor is there, then what can I do for this person? So even if I consider this to be my consciousness, and there is this disturbance in my consciousness, but if there is the devotional purposefulness, the service attitude, then what will happen with time is, this is the disturbance that is there as a part of my consciousness. This is the service attitude, the devotional purposefulness that is there. Then over time, if that service attitude is strong, then that service attitude will fill the consciousness. And then the
Okay,
disturbance will become small.
so is what you're saying is what you're saying overall is there's a couple ways to create this space in our mind
Yes.
from identification with the mind, and one is introspection and the other is devotion. And when
Yeah,
you're
right.
talking about devotion, you're talking about changing the dynamics of our relationships. So where we show up in a relationship looking for, how can I be satisfied? What can I get out of this? To what you're suggesting is that we drop that mentality and we show up as, how can I serve this person? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, now a couple questions I have that come up with that. One is, you can show up for a person, or you can kind of show up in a relationship and say, what can I do for you? But you're still, maybe even in serving them, you're looking for something out from it. Like you're looking for them to appreciate you, or to, like, at some point it's going to require introspection so that you can purify your own ego, right? Because
Yeah, I'm not saying that we don't have introspection. Of course, introspection is required. All that I was saying is that in this particular verse, that this is described to be a devotional virtue. That indicates that this ability to decrease our being disturbed can come from our service attitude. That's the only point I'm saying. Like suppose there is a mother. The mother is afraid of the dark. Young mother, say. And now she has a small child and suddenly the power goes off. The mother will be disturbed because the power has gone off. But she will be, she says, mommy, I'm scared. And the mother, because of her service attitude, because she wants to care for a child, instead of giving in to her fear and collapsing, she will say that, yeah, it'll be all right. We'll find the light will come back. The power will come back. She'll calm down. And that is how things will work. So,
Right.
so even in that case, there's no doubt there has to be a certain level of introspection. But the point is, the focus is not in when the person is on the path of devotion. The focus need not be the introspection. The focus can be the service attitude by which the introspection happens automatically.
Interesting. Okay.
When I look at this, I look at it a little bit differently. I look at introspection as one of the most powerful stepping stones to leading to devotion, dedication, and of course, connected to purpose, because introspection gives a person the time to reflect, to see all the angles that are possibly impacting this disturbance. Sometimes, for example, a person can come home from work and something happened at work, they come home and something very small could irritate them and cause a tremendous amount of disturbance. And that little something could spark into something bigger. So this disturbances, I feel, is very impactful when in dealing with it, when we are really understanding the situation, the disturbance that is being caused. Where is it coming from? Is it me, or is it the circumstance? Is it the situation? Am I bringing this from somewhere else? So looking at the situation from various different angles gives us the ability to see things in proper perspective. And I think that leads to devotion and then to dedication with purpose. Because we realize that, we don't need to be affected by this little argument that we just had in the kitchen, because we have a higher purpose to live for. So I find that introspection is very, very critical junction in coming to this conclusion, because that is where our intelligence is at play, discovering all possible causes for that disturbance. Because if we don't know the causation, how can we really, really develop that deep devotion? So I don't feel like it's two-pronged approach, rather it's one leading to the other, possibly more introspection leading to devotion than devotion leading to introspection. But I think, of course, there almost seems very interconnected. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, I was thinking more from the perspective of that there is the path of jnana and there's the path of bhakti. So generally observing the mind and distancing oneself from the mind, I also find it a very important and empowering exercise, no doubt about it. I'm not devaluing it. The only point I'm making is that in this particular section of the Gita, the significance of it being described as a devotional attribute is that this can be something which enables us to practice our devotion better. And in that sense, we can use introspection to help us practice it better. And at our level, definitely it's good to use introspection. At the same time, there is a higher level of existence where we could say that for somebody who is deeply devoted, this comes as a reflex action. They don't have to contemplate and analyze and distance themselves as a conscious action. Their purpose is so strong that their service attitude is so deep rooted within them that they don't need to. But yes, they are integral to any contemplative person's, any spiritually evolved person's way of functioning.
Yeah, I guess yeah, because I'm thinking like if you live in this material world and you start off with the spiritual conception of just how can I serve you? How can I serve you? Because of your conditioning, you may not be serving the right people, and it may end up bringing you lower. Like you may be mixing your material conception of life with the spiritual because you're not purified enough. Right. And you may even lack the ability to discriminate between getting in healthy servitor relationships. And therefore, you're going to bring your consciousness down. I mean, what about that vulnerability?
Yeah, that is true. Service attitude is not a substitute for intelligence. In fact, one aspect of service attitude is to know where to serve, how to serve effectively. So, yeah, definitely intelligence is required, and in many cases, service attitude may be mistaken. It may well be that when we focus on the practice of using our intelligence, then we know where to serve, how to serve, what to serve. So in devotion, there is definitely there's a mode of service that is important, but then the object of service is also important. If somebody is in an abusive relationship and they keep serving the other person, they might just end up becoming the enablers of the other person. So there is the mode of service in the sense that there's the attitude of service. You can say the attitude of service that is important, but it's also the object of service that is important. And within the object of service, it's important to recognize that while we would like to be of service to everyone, at the same time, it's important to recognize that not everyone is well motivated. So we have to have a hierarchy in the objects of service, a framework, and it is the divine that is our primary object of service. And then in relationship with that, we have other objects of service also. So if a child wants to eat 100 chocolates, and the mother thinks, I want to serve my child, so I'll give the child 100 chocolates. No, that would be a dereliction of duty of the mother. So service attitude always has to be coupled with intelligence. In a parent-child relationship, that is easy to understand. That that's not what a responsible parent should be doing. But in other relationships, sometimes we may have to have a little more conscious discernment that is required.
Yeah, that makes sense to tie into what Veda Sarprabhu said about the stepping stone of introspection, because I feel like if you're pursuing a relationship and it's with somebody who's going to exploit that mode of service, it's likely that your motive is maybe to change that person or to get something from that person that you haven't in the past, like love or appreciation. And if you can purify your motive, then you probably won't be attracted to serving that person anymore. And therefore, you can purify your service and also attract people to serve that bring your consciousness higher.
That's nicely put. Agreed.
I was thinking of this, I'm not sure that metaphor would work, but I was thinking more like this train tracks, so that there's always checks and balances, that the intelligence and the heart are both running parallel, Bhagavad Gita and Pancharatrika Vidhi, that the intelligence is there. Maybe those two may not be the correct words, but the intelligence is the constant companion. So we have a a deep reason for doing what we do, and at the same time make sure that that mode of service, the attitude of service is correct and is kept in check with the intelligence. And at the same time, if we get too caught up in the mood of service, then we can sometimes go through a process of spiritual bypass or be susceptible to exploitation because we're not using our intelligence. So that can also, possibility of that can be there if there isn't a checks and balance to this. What is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I fully agree with that. No doubt about it.
There is something though about being an instrument of service that in my experience in experimenting with these things it brings you to a higher place than really anything else. I do this breath work, this pranayama meditation with this healer, and it's like Wim Hof. I don't know if you guys have done Wim Hof before, but during it, he kind of runs through these like grateful meditations where we think of things that we're grateful for. And he throws out things like, oh, the sun, the moon. And I'm like, oh, and then I'm thinking, okay, my dog, but then when I start thinking of people that I can serve, like when I think of serving Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, serving my husband, it's like I feel like a lightness, almost like I have goosebumps. It makes me so much happier than just like things that I have that I'm grateful for. And it was just something I noticed the other day in that breath work that I really connected to. Like, wow, those kinds of relationships, if you can find those really healthy relationships and be an instrument of service in them and really try to purify that intention, it really is a framework for like the ultimate happiness. I felt that's my experience.
Yeah, beautifully put. We have as much a need to give as we need to get. In psychology, there is this concept of the need to be needed. That when our existence matters to someone else, then that gives meaning to our existence. So now service is, of course, in various modes, but the idea that we get that happiness comes only by getting things. No, if there's a relationship only we are giving and not getting, then it can become unsatisfactory or exploitative. But the idea is we also have a need to give. And when we find individuals in our life who we feel connected with, who feel inspired by, then that actually not only brings out more of the giving spirit, but also makes that giving spirit more beneficial for us as well as for others. Otherwise, as I said, giving spirit can be exploited, but definitely that is also a vital human need. It's often neglected otherwise.
So where is that space of being equipoised? Because in this Gita, we're seeing that that Krishna is saying that someone who is equipoised is very dear to me. Equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety. So
Yeah, that is definitely there. Now we can say, what is the source of being equipoised? My understanding is that source is internal. That internally that person has spiritual stability. Like if we consider this is the ocean, the world is like an ocean and there are waves in it. Now, if I have a steady anchor to hold on to, then by holding on to that anchor, I can stay steady even if there are ups and downs, even if there are waves go up and down. But at the same time, my steadiness, my being equipoised amid the waves does not mean that I should be indifferent towards others who are being tossed by the waves. So being equipoised, it is not being hard-hearted. It is not absence of emo. It is more being clear-headed. Clear-headed means there is a concern for the other person. Oh, this person is in trouble. I want to help that person. If you become hard-hearted, you just don't care for others. And that, so the being equipoised is, okay, I have this shelter and I would like to share the shelter with others. But if in helping others get an anchor, I let go of my own anchor, then I will again be tossed away by the ocean. So that clear-headed, it is that this is the anchor which is helping me, this is the anchor which can help others. So we could say here, hard-hearted is no emotion at all. Whereas clear-headed means no control by emotion. Emotions are not the basis of our decision making. They are one part. If somebody is in trouble, we actually need to feel concerned about them. If we don't feel concerned, then where is our humanity, leave alone our spirituality? But in our concern for them, we cannot become sentimental. Okay, if there is a pandemic and a doctor wants to help a patient, but even helping the patient, the doctor forgets to put on their own mask and the doctor gets infected, then what is the use of helping in that way? That is counterproductive. Am I addressing your point?
Yeah, I think we're coming back to the core issue of how to be equipoised.
Yes.
Is there,
Go ahead, Radha.
could there be another line in here about ignoring your emotions, or in the name of like, I'm supposed to be tolerant? I feel like that's something that I do sometimes that I'm trying to stop doing. Actually, it's like, oh, well, I'm just supposed to be tolerant. I'm just supposed to, so I don't say anything, or I just ignore, and then it just builds up and is worse almost. So when you're equipoised, I guess it's not just something that you choose that you're going to be, right? It's like a practice, and it's, I guess, learning how to have those emotions and how to express them healthily and deal with them healthily, so that you can get to that point of real clear-headedness and not like feigned or like forced, right?
Yeah. In my understanding that ignoring could be one way of dealing with some things, but ignoring cannot be the only way of dealing with something. One of my favorite metaphors rather, for understanding the mind or understanding how to deal with the mind is to consider it like, say, the mind is like a phone screen. Now, on the phone, there might be 50 notifications that have come. Now, some notifications, I just ignore them. And if I ignore them over time, they just go away. But some notifications, they're not meant to be ignored. If my phone is telling me that your battery is about to be discharged, that's not a notification I'm meant to ignore. So ignoring can be for those notifications that are not important, because generally, if something is, we could say, whether it's a thought, an emotion, a craving, whatever it is, if it is casual and circumstantial, only comes in particular circumstances, and it casual means it is not very strong, then ignore, just goes away. But if something is insistent and persistent, it comes very strongly, it comes repeatedly, then definitely it needs to be addressed, it needs to be processed. So, say for example, we say don't be agitated by others, don't agitate others. Now, everybody may have some idiosyncrasies, some behavioral quirks, which may not sit well with us. But if they do it only occasionally, and then it strikes us as strange, it doesn't really worry us too much, then we could ignore it. But if somebody acts in a way that annoys us, irritates us, enrages us, and that's a frequent way, they frequently do something like that, then maybe we have to communicate. We have to do it in a way that does not offend the other person, that does not insult the other person, but still that communication is required so that the underlying issue can be addressed. Otherwise, we will end up not being able to function. So when you say don't one who is not disturbed by others, how are they not disturbed? That varies from person to person. How do they come to that level of equanimity by which they will not be disturbed? Am I making sense here?
Yeah, that helps. So it's kind of like a journey almost of like noticing your triggers, being open to seeing the cause of them, trying on your side to come closer to a place of equipoise, recognizing that you may not be there yet. And if you're in if this involves somebody else that you have a good relationship with, communicating that in a non-violent way so that maybe they can help you. And in that way, trying to make progress together. Or if it's an independent thing, just working on these things so that you can get closer to a state of being equipoised.
Another, if you go up on the screen just a little bit, another part that I really, a little higher, yeah, right here. One of the point that I feel that works for me, I'm not sure if it'll work for anyone else, to be equipoised, where we have, hard-hearted and clear-headed. To be clear-headed, one needs to understand, have a bigger understanding of the universal phenomenon, to understand that there is a universal order that is at play, and there is a universal control. There's a higher intelligence that is at play that is beyond my control, and thereby I accept that there is something more that is affecting the changes around me that I don't have control over, and thereby I'm able to somewhat accept whatever is happening, let it happen, and there must be some sort of a plan that I'm not familiar with, that I don't understand, and there's got to be some divine intervention that's causing all of this to happen. And so therefore, there is a level of acceptance that causes or enables me to be equipoised. Things that I cannot control, I accept and I surrender that there is some higher players in this game of life, and it's just not me and my little world. So this actually is something that helps me to remain clear-headed and equipoised in difficult situations.
So that's a beautiful point. It's like we don't know best, even though we think we do a lot of times. Oftentimes, there's a bigger plan for us.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm controlled by my emotions. Otherwise, I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Like, what's going on? Who is making all this miserable situations for me?
You brought a very important point to round off the discussion. See, when we talk about, say, our own spirituality, how do we stay undisturbed in our relationship with others? One is, say, we could say our own spirituality that brings us a certain level of mindfulness, certain level of mental distance. Then, just because we are anchored, then the second could be that we see that through this person, I am doing service to the divine. So the second could be the service attitude. That I want to be of service, so I won't aggravate the situation. But there's another aspect to it, which is what your focus is saying now, is that actually the divine is acting through this person also. That whatever is happening, there is some higher plan, there is something behind this. So that person may be behaving in an unreasonable way right now, but it is through that person's actions, maybe I am being I meant to learn something. Maybe this is for my growth. So when we see this vision that this is not just this person's action, yes, it is that person's action, but there is also some bigger plan. So then that also brings a certain level of acceptance when we see the higher plan. So if we see only that this person acting in this way, and then I'm all alone in a big bad world, and this person is a big bad guy, then I have to hit back at that person. But I understand, okay, this person may be behaving in a questionable way right now, but the world is moving purposefully, even through this person's actions. So how can I respond in a way that is conducive for my growth? That can be very helpful. So one way to look at this is that if this is the present and this is the future. So we look at the present and plan the future. This is the human plan. Human vision is the human plan. But quite often, the divine plan works differently. The divine sees the future and plans the present. So maybe right now, this person is just being so mean to me. This person is being so unreasonable, so harsh. I'm miserable right now. Why am I here in this place? But maybe there's a higher plan. By learning to deal with this person, I grow in my maturity. I learn how to deal with difficult people. And maybe in future that will serve me well. When I have to do something responsible, something substantial, which requires dealing with different kinds of people. So this is the divine plan. It looks at the future and plans the present. So that way also we can be helped in minimizing the disturbance that may be caused by others' behavior with us and our reactionary behavior with them.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Happy to your service. Should we try to summarize?
Please.
Yes. So, okay, so let me go back. In fact, in some ways, this diagram itself was a summary, but we are discussing today about how this principle of don't disturb others, don't be disturbed by others. So the Gita is telling that the first point was because a test of our spirituality. That is not just our direct so-called spiritual practices, but also we could say our interpersonal dealings. That's why the theme was don't just tell me what you believe, show me how you behave. That is what here is being valued. So while this is important, this is much, much more important. Our spirituality is seen through how we deal with others. And the dealing with others means that we act in a way, let's say if the other person is disturbing, we stay calm. And even if we are disturbed, the way we behave is that the other person doesn't become disturbed by that. So not disturbed and not disturbing. And then we discussed 3 ways to go about doing this. Not disturbed by others, not disturbing to others. So one way was introspection, that I am not my mind. The disturbance is coming in my mind, but I am distant from it. So this is the soul, this is the mind. So this might be, the disturbance might be there here, but this can be steady. So introspection to distance ourselves from the mind was one way. And the second way was, we discussed service attitude, that devotional purposefulness. What can I do for this person? That can help us again in staying calm. Because focus is not why is this person not doing this for me, but what can I do for this person? Last part we discussed was through focus on a higher plan, on the divine plan. That, okay, this person is behaving unreasonably, but let me not get overworked by it. Let me accept that there's something higher happening which I don't understand, and let me wait and see how things work out. Okay. Any concluding comments before we finish?
I was just thinking, that after my plant fiasco, the next day we have this bird feeder and all these beautiful birds come, but the squirrels, my husband noticed there's squirrels hanging out at the bottom, and the squirrels I think need to get fed. Maybe we should start feeding them almonds. And I'm like, oh my God, now we're going to be attracting all these squirrels into our yard. Like, I'm totally not interested in feeding the squirrel population. And he's like, squirrels, they forget about 80% of the nuts that they plant. And I'm like, really? And then I started thinking, like, wow, what would this world be like if squirrels didn't forget about the nuts that they bury, and trees are just randomly everywhere? It would actually be kind of brutal. But the point being, like, I'm just thinking about the squirrel and the squirrel's impact on me, but the bigger plan of the squirrel, and even the fact that he's forgetting all of these nuts, it makes such a beautiful, like, impact on the earth that who could plan for that? The squirrel doesn't even plan for that. It's like, so as a closing thought.
Perfect closing thought.
That's beautiful cyclicity to the whole presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think Michael's going to share some reflection today.
Sure. Yeah, I can. Thank you. I want to thank you to all three of you for such a wonderful presentation on the subject. Thanks everyone for being here. So some things that came to me as we were
Can we
going.
zoom out from the screen so we can see everyone?
Maybe if you just stop screen share, is that how you do it, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu?
That's why I'm doing it. Yeah.
So I mean, a number of things really stood out. I mean, that this class covered a lot of ground. So some things that stayed in my mind. I was in a retreat last weekend, and one of the concepts that was really hammered home when talking about like making a spiritual connection, in this case through japa and kirtan, but that this path of bhakti is the path and the goal are both the same. And I heard a lot of that coming out in this presentation. When I think about trying to become more equiposed, or when I think about trying to become more service minded, or looking at how I interact with others, for me, it's about that kind of, the action, that was talked about with that emotion, with devotion, and then the dedication with devotion. If I want to be kinder to other people, I start acting kinder to other people, and then I get the result of being a kinder person. If I want to become a more honest person, I become more honest with the people I'm dealing with, and then I become a more honest person. And so, like, the path and the goal, are really kind of the same. And I think that, even going back to what we were talking about yesterday with nature, how I act in one area really impacts how I act in all areas. And so, when I'm trying to access and see the divine in nature, that helps me access and see the divine in other people. That helps me access and see the divine in myself. And what was being talked about with that, stepping back and getting perspective on things, when I'm able to step back and see the divine in myself, or see the divine in others, see the divine in nature, certain things that they do don't bother me in the same way, and the more I can kind of condition myself to not get bothered by the disturbances caused by other people, the less likely I am to create those disturbances to other people. And so I kind of think that, as was talked about, there's like that kind of, the train tracks, or the ebb and flow between the two things. And then, also then, just tying that into the bigger picture of that acceptance of, like, the larger, the divine, the universal order. I was thinking back years ago when my wife and I were first married. We bought a house, and 3 months after we got married, the house flooded and we lost everything. And one of the only things that survived in the basement was this little laminated card that just said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans for today. And at that time, that seemed like such a major crisis. I didn't know how we were going to get through it. I didn't know how I was going to get through it. But yet some of the lessons that were learned and some of the things that were taught and some of the changes that affected ended up being, very, very beneficial in the long run. So, I wasn't able to see the immediate effect from the larger plan. So those are some things that stuck out for me. So I really appreciate this class. Thank you, everyone.
It's so funny, Michael. I just wanted to last share because you shared something really nice. Just in our retreat here in Nashville yesterday, we were just talking about how when we try to put someone down, try to push someone down, we actually go down with them. And if you want to be lifted up, you need to continue lifting people up. The more you lift people up, the more you go up. The more you push people down, the more you go down. So we were just talking about the same thing that you were doing at the retreat in New York. We're doing it here in Nashville. So it's very interesting. So thank you for sharing that, Michael. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Grateful to be with all of you, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Namaste, everyone.